Hi, everyone. This is Brian Carroll. I'd like to welcome you to today's B2B Lead Podcast. I have Mack Fogelson with us today. I'm super excited to bring her ideas and thoughts to you. Mack is CEO of Genuinely, and they are consulting and training companies. And why I wanted to talk with Mack is I got introduced to Mack through a mutual friend of ours. And so we've developed this friendship, and I've learned a lot about purpose and how important that is with marketing. As a lot of you listeners know, I've talked about empathy, and Mack has really brought this extra dimension of talking about purpose and how it's so important. So, Mack, I just want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian, so much for having me and for your kind words. I'm excited to have the conversation today.
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. Way long ago, in another dimension, I was actually a teacher, and so did that for a while, and then over the last 14 years, I've been in the marketing space. So everything from building and coding websites to optimizing with search engine optimization, to building community and brands and the full integrated approach to marketing a company. And all of those layers and those many years has brought us to where we are now, which is essentially teaching companies how to use these concepts, obviously, that we've pioneered or created or created an amalgam of all the things we've learned over the years, and just really paying forward the frameworks and the processes that ultimately help companies in the digital age compete, contend, and build really great, meaningful, sustainable businesses.
What inspired you to focus on purpose and humanizing marketing?
Yeah, that's a loaded question possibly, but I think it's because around the time I started having my family about almost a decade ago, I just realized that in my work on a daily basis, if I was taking that time away from my family, that I really needed to make it count. And so ultimately, I've always really built a business around something that has been very meaningful to me, and certainly wanting to make that very meaningful for my employees. And then we really just got into the mode of wanting to help companies be better. And I started in really the conversation about community. Many years back, I was on the stage for Moz in the search engine marketing space, really talking a lot about the benefit of community and companies building a community in order to help their businesses. And what I didn't realize at the time, but unfolded many years later, was that purpose was really at the heart of all of that. Purpose, connection, people, and really helping companies to understand how you bring people together through purpose, and certainly in order to drive their growth.
That's really cool. And I think the challenge that a lot of B2B marketers face and our listeners and readers is that I talk to a lot of B2B marketers, and they feel that, one, they're working with budgets that aren't huge, and they feel like there's a lot more noise. So how is it that we can you've said that it's not about what you spend in marketing. It's how you put your energy or how purpose helps you get focused. Why is that?
Yeah, because there's so much that has changed. The world isn't the same. Businesses are not the same, and the way the business world works. Customers are not the same, and so we cannot expect marketing to be the same. So essentially, we're looking at consumers now, which we are consumers just as we are marketers, but we see through marketing. We expect authentic and very real and human experiences, and not only that, but employees are looking for more meaning in their work, just like I was, many years ago. And so it really comes down to the fact that it's not about what your company sells or solves anymore. And certainly you need to be extremely stellar at what you sell and what you make. But it's about who your company is. And really it's about the three components of purpose, people, and promise, and having those pieces work together for any given company so that they can reap all the benefits that purpose brings, like customer acquisition and retention, customer connection, and also employee satisfaction.
It's really important, and I know that you've talked about this a bit, but there has been this disconnect. And so how can we overcome this disconnect to better connect with our customers or our future customers?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing to realize is that, most companies are pushing their products and they're trying to push their services rather than really leading from what their company is here to do and bridging that gap between the purpose of the company and the people that are in line with that. And so when the conversation is about products, there isn't much of a conversation to be had. So let's say we're just talking about Dove, which they're kind of a very popular example of purpose in the sense that, they sell soap, but ultimately their purpose is to help women feel good about their bodies. And so it's the intersection of those things and the cultural relevancy of attacking an issue like women's self-image and their body image and wanting to really help solve that problem in our world is what has given them such an incredible growth in their organization. And so when the conversation shifts from being about product to being about purpose, it becomes something else entirely that drives growth because it's the word of mouth that companies are looking for. And that doesn't come through talking about a product. It comes from the connection that they have through the shared values and wanting to do something bigger. Not to say that they don't generate great profit from this path. It's just a different way to it.
Well, and as I'm listening to you, part of me was like, there's times where and I'm sure some of our listeners may be saying, I wish I could sell something as simple as Dove in a lot of ways, and where you have a B2B complex sale. And you've talked about why building a human and authentic company is necessary. So why should those in B2B marketing care about this? When they have something that's complex and lots of people, why should we care? And hasn't this work been done already?
Right. And that's the thing is purpose is a big conversation. It has been for a lot of years, and it's becoming, I guess, right now more of a trendy topic, and you see it everywhere. And I think that's the biggest disconnect is that companies think that if on the outside they market for purpose, that they're good, they're safe. And maybe many companies are doing that. But if then the experience with your company is not true all the way to the core, then that's where you're going to have your big problems. And kind of a roundabout way to answer your question in terms of why companies should care and why do they need this is, this isn't really a, clarify your purpose as an organization and then great, check that off, stencil some words on your wall and just call it good and maintain a strong culture. It's more than that. It's understanding how then that is communicated in your sales, in your marketing, because ultimately in the day-to-day, companies want to know how do we achieve growth and how do we continue to acquire customers and how do we keep our customers? Well, when your company is not looking at how to build a deeper connection with that customer, which, by the way, comes from purpose and empathy, as we've talked about, there is no connection. And so when you have no connection, you have no customer. So it's really in applying the purpose to the day-to-day of the organization and understanding how that's not just some visionary thing about identifying a purpose and then making it relevant to your customers. It's helping your teams internally understand what purpose is or isn't, because many companies think it's a PR approach, or it's a tagline, or it's a mission or value statement, or it's even making a bunch of money over here to give money over there. And that's all great. But when it comes down to it, purpose is really, what does that mean to your customer who needs your product and wants to connect deeply with your company? You think about Patagonia. They're selling a stellar product, but they're also going deeper to say that we are going to pioneer technology to make better clothing, and we're going to reduce the impact of that on the environment. And then we're going to give this technology to our competitors, because if they have it, then we're making a larger impact altogether. And certainly that appears to be a very, very, going very far with the concept of purpose. But you look at a company like Chipotle, and they ultimately have been working on food with integrity as their purpose for many, many years. They have completely exponentially outperformed the competition, and all because they have centered their entire company around this thought that food can be better made, even in an industry where food is fast food and you have to do it for cutting your margins, And so now they're on this path of figuring out, even with their food safety issues, how are they going to get back to their purpose and still deliver food with integrity and keep their customers while staying true to their profit. So I think to answer your question, that companies need purpose because they need it to keep their employees, they need it to keep their customers, and ultimately there's something bigger that their businesses are here to do. And it's not an altruistic path. It's a path to profit. It's just, again, a different way of getting there.
And I appreciate that you talked about all the dimensions and also with some examples. Well, actually, a little bit later, I want to ask you for some tips that we in marketing can use to take steps to, one, understand our purpose and articulate that, but also start having that conversation internally. I also love that you talked a bit about empathy in the beginning, and I talk a lot about that too. So what do you wish marketers and sellers would do more in this respect? I'd love to learn from you and hear your thoughts.
In regards to empathy?
Yeah, in terms of, does empathy play a role in understanding your purpose and connecting with customers, or what do you wish marketers and sellers did more in this respect?
And definitely, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler alert to maybe your tips towards the end, but one of the biggest things that we see is that companies lack the customer connection and obviously the connection to their purpose and any type of authentic or personal or empathetic connection to customers, because they're using data to make decisions, which comes, they have, a copious amount of data, right? Some companies just don't even know what to do with it anymore. But it's not in just analyzing your customer data or your audience data or the psychographic data that you get on your customers, but it's participating in one-to-one interviews with them to truly understand their behaviors and more specifically understanding what they're thinking and feeling. Because when you get that data about your customers, that's great that it gives you some very quantitative benchmarks about the profile of these people, but it doesn't tell you what they're afraid of. It doesn't tell you what they're struggling with right now at this point in their lives. And connecting with your customers on that one-to-one basis obviously opens up a huge conversation for understanding and empathizing with where they're coming from. But then by understanding that thinking and feeling, you can then shape your entire content strategy based on removing those roadblocks. And that's something I think that ties into many things in addition to purpose and empathy.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up that tip and jumped ahead, and that's actually where we're going to go. But I think you're spot on, and actually I've talked with marketers who really don't get to spend face time with the customers they're looking to influence or reach outside their companies. And so I think the takeaway here is that marketers need to spend more time connecting with customers, and not just through their channel or through their sales team, but actually having these conversations and spending time in the world and doing that and practicing and using their empathy to do just that. So what other...
Yeah, it's kind of like... Oh, sorry, Brian.
No,
sorry.
go right ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is you and I talk about this a lot with technology and how, everybody thinks that technology is a magic pill, and they think there must be a tool or a piece of technology or software that is going to help us build our customer base faster, or, some magic trick. And the fact of the matter is that that's part of the root of the problem in which companies need purpose. They need empathy because they're trying to solve these much deeper connection issues with their customers by using technology and in lieu of speaking with their customers. And those tools can't help you do that. So I think definitely the companies who understand how to use technology wisely, obviously they need to be able to use that at a certain level, even just to do a bunch of the heavy lifting and dirty work that we couldn't, take part in many years ago. But it's been taking that data and then pairing it with the one-to-one participation in the flesh with these people to really understand who they are, what they need, and help them get their roadblocks removed.
I agree with you, and as we've talked about, the thing that I've realized and has come up is the very thing that's supposed to help us, the technology, connect with our customers more efficiently and effectively, is getting in the way of us doing that. And so to counteract that, or the counterpoint, is humanizing and actually putting more energy into that human connection, so that when we do apply the technology, we're using it well, and we're using it in a way that can help facilitate conversations and connection that we've already established.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
So can you share any other tips or examples that our listeners can use to, one, articulate and apply their purpose so that it's not outside in, but it's inside out?
Yeah, and actually I can kind of share like 4 steps that would really help them understand, like, how do we even approach this conversation? Because using purpose in your organization and certainly having that be a very cornerstone of your growth, and specifically we're focusing on how that is communicated in sales, marketing, and customer experience. But certainly it's not the only piece to the success of your organization. Like, there are so many things that have to be in line, strategy and leadership and obviously your product or service. But purpose greatly enhances the opportunity for success, especially in the digital age and especially in terms of competitive advantage. So just know that if you're going to go down this road, that you don't have to start all over. You don't have to overhaul your entire organization. In fact, many companies that we work with, they just need an outside perspective to help them understand their systems and processes that they use to market and sell. Just need a little bit of tweaking here and there and a reminder of, hey, at this place is when you integrate purpose. At this place is when you really bring it back to the goals of the organization wrapped with purpose, or you need to get to the customer, in this place a little bit earlier. So let me just walk through these 4 tips, and I'll try to make it as quick as possible. So the first of these 4 steps is basically clarifying the purpose of the organization. So we talked a little bit about Dove. So their purpose is not to sell soap. Their purpose is to help women feel better about their bodies. So that's the big difference there. Same with Chipotle. Their purpose is not to sell burritos. Their purpose is to make food with integrity and ultimately pioneer food safety systems and help other fast food organizations know that they can make great food and still make it healthy and good for our earth. So it's kind of like understanding that the difference there between just a mission and the product that you're selling, and really making the conversation about purpose. So start there. If you're at a loss as to how to do that, there are lots of resources online. We are particular to the Ogilvy and Mathers tool that is really effective in helping companies understand the cultural tension that they're trying to address in the world, as well as what they do at their best self. And that is how you find your purpose. It's not easy to do, but it's certainly a place that will make you extremely relevant in your customers' lives. So starting with clarifying the purpose of your organization, that's number one. The second step is deconstructing your customer journey. So now I'm getting more specific to sales, marketing, customer experience, and those teams in your organization, and understanding how to do this by actually talking with your customers. So just as I mentioned earlier, you definitely want to be looking at the customer data that you can collect digitally, understand the audience data, the demographic data, the psychographic data that you get. But that's normally where companies stop, is they build these personas and then they don't go any deeper into actually spending face-to-face time with the customer. And that's where all the good stuff is. That's where you're going to find connection, and that's where you're going to understand what your customers are thinking and feeling at every stage in your funnel, so that you can then generate resources, content, experiences that help to remove those roadblocks. So that's the second part, is deconstructing that customer journey so that you can then make that bridge between your purpose and your people. So the third step in getting purpose really well integrated in your organization is connecting your team's purpose to your organization's purpose. So ultimately, you have to know the purpose of your organization in its entirety to really understand what your organization as a whole exists to achieve beyond profit. And then the second part of that is then with your team, understand what role they play in achieving that purpose, so that they can really apply that more specifically to their day-to-day. And that can go a really long way for efficiency and output and morale, especially when your team is pushing hard and days are getting long. The meaning side of that really matters to them. And so the fourth and final step after connecting your team's purpose to your organization's purpose is really adjusting the communication of your purpose externally. So this very much directly applies to your sales and marketing and customer experience teams. They're the most outwardly facing, so they are the ones that have the biggest responsibility in making sure that what is happening inside of your organization is also being effectively communicated outside, so companies know you're not a facade, that purpose is not a veneer, that it's truly how you operate inside and out. So essentially, you want to teach your sales and marketing teams to understand the difference between having a product conversation and having a purpose conversation. So when you make that shift to not just pushing your product, but then helping those teams understand the bigger purpose of your organization and how that connects to your customers, then ultimately you're opening an opportunity to connect with exponentially more people, more organizations, more influencers, more people in the media, more communities who are either already your ideal customer or they know somebody who could be. And that's probably the biggest factor there.
Mack, that was fantastic. Thank you. You did a good job distilling down to 4 points, and I feel like this will be tangible for our listeners. I know we'll also provide some resources and links for people to dig into these areas as well. I have just one more question. I wanted to ask what advice you would give to those who want to apply what you just talked about and bring this idea to other leaders inside their companies. So what if someone who might be doing marketing communications or some frontline sales and is inspired by this idea and feels like they ought to do this, like how can they get the conversation started inside their company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's starting small. Like I said, I think that purpose as a concept seems very intimidating, especially to leaders, because they feel like, oh my gosh, you're talking about an entire organization overhaul and we can't even keep up with what we're doing every day. So I don't think it's about that, because we've already kind of touched on that. It's not really starting over. It's just optimizing what you have and better connecting it and communicating it so that your employees and your customers can understand it so that they want to support your growth. So I think it's just starting small. Like we typically start with like a very small purpose workshop. And, we're talking maybe 45 to 60 minutes of helping companies understand what purpose is and what purpose isn't. And I can supply some of the research and the resources that have informed those workshops that we do if that would help people. So certainly they can pull some information out of that. And then once they, kind of start the conversation, I think it's also to understand that purpose seems kind of fluffy maybe when you're trying to hit your ROI and your metrics and the goals that you have financially for your team and for the organization, and just help your leadership or your C-suite or whoever understand that this is about growth. It actually doesn't have anything to do with purpose. This is about growth. And in this day and age, this is the approach to growth, is understanding how to come at it from this place. But when you're selling it to your leadership, it's really understanding that we're going to teach our sales, marketing, and customer experience teams how to remove roadblocks for our customers by connecting that to purpose. And that ultimately is going to drive sales. It's going to drive retention. It's going to drive connection. And ultimately, it's going to drive our growth.
Terrific. Well, Mack, what's the best way for readers and listeners to get in touch with you?
Oh, well, obviously they can come to our website, genuinely.co, C-O is our domain. But certainly they can reach out to me via email, Mack, M-A-C-K, @genuinely.co, or just come find me online. I'm on Twitter most every day, happy to chat there, and also LinkedIn. Love to have these conversations. So please feel free to reach out even with the smallest of questions.
Well, thanks again for coming on and sharing. I've learned a lot from our conversation today. We've talked many times, so I'm sure our listeners have as well. Thanks again, Mack.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.